Today we are going to set up DNS and DHCP on our Windows Server 2016 virtual machine. So we should start with that virtual machine already existing in VirtualBox. So last time I saved the machine state, which is basically like putting the virtual machine to sleep. So I'm going to go ahead and click Start to boot that up. I don't need this VirtualBox window anymore right now. So it'll take a few seconds to boot up. It should happen fairly quickly, depending on how fast your hardware is. There we go. Got our virtual machine up there. So I'm going to close the server manager just in case yours is closed for some reason. To start it, click the Windows icon and launch the server manager. It'll boot up. There'll be a quick start section, which is helpful. What we want to do is add roles and features. So some data collection is happening. I'll click pause until it works. Okay, it's done, so I can click add roles and features. Now you can read this message. It does give you some good information. Your administrator account should be secure. The network settings should be configured. Now, typically we would want to set a static IP address here. We're just going to go with the one that Windows assigned automatically. That'll be okay for now. In a real live infrastructure at a company, you would want to set a static IP address, but we're okay for now. And you would want to install your updates. We're not going to do 2 out of 3, but that's okay. For our purposes, this is fine. Go ahead and click Next. We're going to choose role-based or feature-based installation. Now, select a server or virtual hard disk on which to install roles and features. We only have one server in our server pool. You might be in an organization that has dozens or hundreds of these servers. You could select hundreds and do this at the same time on a bunch of them. We are just going to do this once on the only server that we have here. So I'll go ahead and click Next. Now we need to select DHCP server. As soon as I click that box, a window pops up. It says, hey, would you like to install the tools to manage it? Yes, that's fine. I'm going to click Add Features. It's going to warn me about the IP address. I don't have a static IP address. Yes, I know. We're going to live with it. Continue. Now the DHCP server, that means that this server is going to advertise IP addresses that are available. So that when someone plugs in their laptop, they can get an IP address automatically. DNS, that's domain name services. So we can look up domain names and get IP addresses. So I'm going to check the DNS box. I'm going to add the features to manage it. And again, it's going to warn me about not having a static IP address. That's okay. It's okay for now, at least. So I'm done. We checked DNS. We added the features. I'm going to click Next. We don't need any additional features right now, so I'm going to go ahead and click Next. Windows is going to give me some helpful information here. It's good to read over this information at least once and know what it means. I'm going to click Next. We're going to click Next for DNS information. Confirm, yeah, looks good. I'll allow it to automatically restart. I need it to work, so if it needs to restart, go ahead and restart. So it should run for a while. Like it says, you can close this window. It's going to install in the background. But we're just going to monitor the progress here. I'll pause the video until the installation finishes. Okay, the feature installation is getting close to being done. Just waiting patiently for Windows to do its thing. So if you look at the message, it says that some post install steps are needed. So let's go ahead and close this window. We can see that now on my server manager dashboard, I have DHCP and DNS server roles and groups. So that's good. That's what we want to be there. So we're going to manage DHCP. So if I click on DHCP on the dashboard on the left, there'll be a message that's saying that some configuration is required for DHCP. So let's go ahead and fix that. So we click on more. Another pop-up comes up, and there's a link, complete DHCP configuration. So here's another wizard that we have to go through. So the feature is installed. Now we actually have to make it work on the server. We have to tell the server how DHCP is supposed to function. So it's adding some groups. We'll just click commit. It's restarting the DHCP server service to make everything work properly. If I click at the start menu, I go to services, just type services. We'll look at services running on my computer. Essentially, these services all run in the background. There's no graphical user interface, but they're doing something helpful for the computer. Most of these, we don't have to ever worry about it. They just make the operating system work. You can see in the status column, many of them are running. Some are not running because we don't need them. Like, we don't need Bluetooth on our server. If maybe for some reason you might need Bluetooth on a server, you could turn that service on. We don't need to do that. We see there's a DHCP server and client running. And if we go down, we should see, yeah, DNS is running too. We just installed those services. One useful thing about services is that you can define them, have them run as soon as Windows boots, and manage them from the server management dashboard. Okay. That looks good. You can close this. If I click DHCP, I right click on the server, I can, let's see, I can come to the DHCP manager now. We already restarted the services. So I'm going to come to DHCP manager, and now I've essentially launched the DHCP app. So keep scrolling down. So we want to expand this particular server, expand IP version 4. We can right click there and create new scope. So we've got another wizard. Microsoft likes the wizards. We're going to click next. So let's give it a name. Let's just call it Roaming Laptops. This name is just for us as administrators to know what's happening. For company users only. So the starting IP address. This is the range of IP addresses that people can claim. So we'll start at 10.1.1.100. This is a somewhat arbitrary choice. It's in the private IP address space, 10.1.1.200. So we've got about 100 IP addresses there that we can assign out to people. All right, so what subnet mask do we want to use? We want to use 24. So I can use this handy dandy button here to choose 24. It's going to give me the right subnet mask. We want /24, so that's good. Now, if we want to exclude any IP addresses from that range, we could do that here. Like if we wanted to keep 1 or 2 IP addresses for web servers, printers, those types of things, I could add in those exclusions. I don't need any of those here. I'm going to click Next. Now, how long do I want these leases to be good for? Essentially, how long can one computer own an IP address? The default here is for 8 days, which is fine if you're not having a lot of turnover. Other organizations, maybe 4 hours, 8 hours might be a better choice if a lot of people are coming in and out. If you're running a Subway restaurant and you're setting up DHCP on your wireless router, you don't want to give somebody an 8-day lease on an IP address. It's going to be more like an hour or 2 hours. But for here, 8 days is fine. Okay, so do I want to configure these options now? Yes. So what is the IP address for our router? I'm going to choose 10. My numpad doesn't work right now. 10.1.1.1. So that device doesn't actually exist on the network, but we're going to use it. I'm going to add it. So that's good. So the DNS server. Well, this PC is going to be our DNS server. So it's 10.0.2.15 is our IP address. Oh, sorry, parent domain. I'm reading the wrong spot. We don't need a parent domain. 10.0.2.15. We're going to add this. It's checking if DNS is running on this computer. It is running because we installed it. I'm going to remove these entries that were added automatically. So I only have one DNS server. So when someone gets an IP address, they're also going to get this set as their DNS server. We're going to click Next. We're going to ignore this option. And we're going to activate the scope and finish. So this is good. My scope is active. That means when this computer receives a DHCP broadcast request, someone on my network is looking for an IP address, my Windows server is going to respond and attempt to give that computer an IP address with the correct router, aka default gateway, and DNS information. Now I can look at this address pool, my start and end IP addresses. I look at my leases, yeah, there's nobody there yet. My one Windows server is kind of lonely. It's all by itself. So nobody's asking for IP addresses right now. That's okay. So I'm going to close this DHCP. That's all good. Now let's look at DNS. Let's come to our DNS manager. So I'm going to highlight DNS on my server manager dashboard. Right click on the server that I want to configure and choose DNS manager. So I'm going to expand my server. Now a forward lookup zone turns a domain name into an IP address. A reverse lookup zone turns an IP address into a domain name. So we'll start with a forward lookup zone. So I'm going to right click on forward lookup zones and choose new zone. Click Next. This is going to be a primary zone. What's my zone name? I'm just going to enter acme.com. So that would be, for example, my domain, the domain name of my company. We're going to create a new file. That's fine. We're not going to allow dynamic updates. I'm going to click Next. All this information looks good, so I'll click Finish. So I'm going to right click on acme.com and choose New Host, so that when somebody looks up intranet.acme.com, they get the following IP address: 192.168.1.10. So I'm going to click Add Host. Successfully added. Done. Now to add a reverse lookup, it's a little bit trickier. New zone, going to be primary zone. It's going to be an IPv4 reverse lookup. 192, Network ID is 192.168.1. Use a new file, that's fine. No dynamic updates. Finish. So I'm going to right click on this new and create a new pointer record. So the IP address will be .10 and the host name will be intranet.acme.com. So you can see the fully qualified domain name is kind of the IP address in reverse. So click OK. So let's open our command prompt and let's test these settings. We'll use the NS lookup command. So NS lookup, so that's the DNS lookup tool, intranet.acme.com, and we're going to look it up on 10.0.2.15. Okay, it tells us that the address, the IP address for that intranet.acme.com should be at 192.168.1.10. So that's good. Now let's test the reverse lookup. NS lookup 192.168.1.10, 10.0.2.15. So this says, do a reverse lookup, find the domain name associated with that IP address. So it tells us that it's intranet.acme.com. So we've just used the forward and reverse lookup. What if we look up google.com on there? Let's see what happens when we do that. Okay, well I haven't configured Google in my DNS yet, so excuse me, that's not going to work. We need to change our DNS manager. So I'm going to highlight my DNS server, go to Actions, Properties, and in Forwarders, I have to edit. So I'm going to add a forwarder to 8.8.8.8. So that's a public Google DNS server. Click OK, click Apply. Okay, close that. So now if my DNS server doesn't find an entry, it will forward it over to Google. So let's try this. Okay, now if we do NS lookup, google.com works. I get an IP address for Google. Because my DNS server didn't know what it was, it forwarded that request to 8.8.8.8, which is Google's IP public DNS server on the internet, and then my DNS server gave it back to me. So that's good. We've gone over very briefly how to set up DHCP and DNS in Windows Server 2016. Obviously, there's a lot more complex stuff that you can do with DHCP and DNS, and I haven't fully explained the underlying reasons and the big infrastructure, why DHCP and DNS exist. But as you learn about the concepts in the book and in class, hopefully these hands-on exercises will help all of that make more sense.